like Brexit, there is a period of the what we would call the post-Brexit period, which is probably anything sort of before the vote prior in 2016, to of course after what we would say. Alexa there. And of course, that would be the post-Brexit years since the vote of 2016. And it's kind of interesting to look at both how, not only how Brexit at the time was pitched by Brexiteers, not only by the likes of Jacob Rees Mogg, Daniel Hannan, etc., etc. The list goes on and on and on of all the Eurosceptics you could probably list and listen to them. And there are out there on YouTube of those pre-2016 discussions about Euroscepticism. And of course, Nigel Farage was obviously a big pushing factor to push people to more, to try and get this referendum and ultimately to achieve the dream of many of these Brexiteers, which was to create and craft Britain into this free market fundamentalist paradise. As we've said before, well, you've heard us use the term before, Singapore on Thames, but as we've discussed that before, Singapore is nothing like they describe it actually being like. So there you go. But one of the interesting things, of course, has been the fact that prior to Brexit, the Brexiteers had lots to say about Brexit. You couldn't shut them up talking about the supposed benefits of Brexit and how wonderful it would all be, and it would all be roses and puppies and kittens, and it would be all fantastic. But now, they almost have nothing to say. And Jacob Rees Mogg was once treated as the upcoming, the up and coming guy in the Conservative Party. He was like someone you really had to listen to. But recently, with his performance on LBC, I think that tide has certainly changed. And again, the guy who is in charge of looking for Brexit benefits, but he himself, who was a committed Brexiteer, who can't even name one, almost 2 years after Brexit officially happening, well, it just goes to show you how vacuous the arguments for Brexit and really the case for Brexit really was. So we're going to go into this article from The Independent, but before we do that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help support the channel that way. So, on with the article. So, this comes from The Independent, which is said with the title of Brexit has laid bare the towering idiocy of Jacob Rees Mogg, and that's a Brexit benefit. When Jacob Rees Mogg goes on a radio phone-in and finds himself unable to think of a single benefit of Brexit fully 6 years after it happened, and instead blames the total failure on the EU, who are apparently being mean to us, it's important to remember that this has got nothing to do with Brexit being a disaster, and it has everything to do with Jacob Rees Mogg being stupid. And I said it years and years ago. All this time, anytime a Brexiteer dares to blame the EU for the faults of Brexit, it just casts how stupid they are and how ridiculous their arguments are. Because you cannot blame the EU. Now we're out of it. This is what you wanted. This is the perfect supposed environment for Britain to flourish. So why isn't it? Anyway, it continues. Brexit is great. That's just, it's just that Jacob Rees Mogg is, of course, too dim to have realised. And I can already list one massive benefit of Brexit. Before Brexit happened, there was a vague sense in Westminster that Rees Mogg, a persistent critic of the Cameron government, was a serious person who was usually worth listening to. Now that Brexit has happened, elevating Rees Mogg to the cabinet, he has been unable to prevent himself from laying bare his own towering idiocy. And without Brexit, that would have never have occurred. So, all right, that's not much of a benefit, but at least it's better than anything Rees Mogg has managed to come up with himself, thus proving the point. And of course, this isn't just Rees Mogg, I want to point out. I want to point that out very clearly. It's not just Rees Mogg. It's Nigel Farage, it's Boris Johnson, it's Michael Gove, it's Rishi Sunak, it's Nadine Dorries, it's Liz Truss. And Liz Truss especially, who was a Remainer turned Brexiteer, road to Damascus style. She hasn't got any answers to it, and yet she spent, again, the entire referendum arguing that it was a good idea to stay in the EU. And yet she becomes the Brexit trade minister, trying to do the very things that she argued were never going to be profitable or even benefit Southall. So, it just goes to show you the stupidity that is really on display in the cabinet. And of course, if you want further proof, you'll need to look no further than, yes, the next 10 seconds of Rees Mogg's LBC phone-in. In the next few days, it's going to become clear whether the Prime Minister has been found to have broken his own COVID laws by attending illegal parties in both the office part in Downing Street and then part of his home. It's not quite sure if he will get fined, but it doesn't bode well that the best defence that ministers and cabinet currently have is that the public have, quote, moved on. And it especially doesn't bode well if the members of the cabinet, i.e. Rees Mogg, are stupid enough to try this on radio phone-in shows. Because what happens on a radio phone-in show is that members of the public phone in. At which point it becomes very, very clear and very quickly, indeed, whether or not they've moved on. And they haven't. You will not be overly shocked to learn that I have been told by Rees Mogg that they've moved on. And there were no calls from members of the public to say, yeah, what even was this party business? I have completely moved on. And more to the point, if there's anyone alive out there who's, quote, moved on, Rees Mogg will have to hope that absolutely none of them were listening to his radio phone-in show on LBC. And I want to point this out. This is yet another thing that will probably get played in the next general election ad nauseum. You will get used to seeing this clip everywhere. Everywhere. Because this is yet another in a series of long lines of media files that Labour, the Lib Dems, any opposition party you can name are going to put out and play ad nauseum. You're going to be sick of seeing this clip. But it's a fantastic clip and he's done it to himself. So, of course, which out the doubt will, quote, move them on right back from wherever it is they've moved on to. And as a direct consequence of Rees Mogg explaining to them that they've to be stupid enough to believe the words coming out of his mouth. It's very clear that some people do believe that Boris Johnson will get fined, which is why the preemptive defence is currently being bandied about by Rees Mogg and others that does not involve denying any wrongdoing. Rather, it consists of denying that Johnson deliberately misled the House of Commons when he told MPs on multiple occasions, let's firm that in, on multiple occasions, that he hadn't been to any parties. And then that he hadn't been to any of the parties, and then, all right, that he hadn't been to one of them, but he didn't know that it was a party. Again, he has misled Parliament on this, which is a resigning offence. Will he do it? Will there be enough letters in? We heard rumours that apparently it got close. To it. So could this reopen the Partygate row again? Possibly. We'll find out probably later this week. So if the Prime Minister is told information that is incorrect and passed on that information, he has made no deliberate effort to mislead, Rees Mogg gleefully explained to a member of the public who called in to ask about Partygate despite having apparently already moved on. And yes, it was at this point that the movers on turned and sprinted right back into where they'd moved on from, specifically to ask Jacob, are you actually taking the actual piss or what? If the Prime Minister is told information that is incorrect and passes on that information, then he has made no deliberate effort to mislead, which is kind of true, except for the nagging awful fact that the incorrect information that he passed on was there, and he hadn't been at any parties, even though he himself had been to them. It's curious. It's a very curious thought experiment, which some people have flatteringly described as sophistry, but is actually just artless bullshit. Should Johnson receive a fine for breaking the lockdown rules, he is of course expected to appeal, just as all the receivers of penalty notices are. We will look forward to the form being made public. Dear Metropolitan Police, thank you for sending me this picture of myself topless and tie around head, funneling 3 bottles of wine directly from a suitcase. But I've asked one of my staff and they've said that it didn't happen. So I'm sure we can agree that this is the end to the matter. To which the police will surely reply, sorry, what has this even been about? Everyone's moved on. And I think, as I already covered earlier this week, the public anger is still there. The idea that, again, people have, quote, moved on, simply not true. The anger is still there. It's palpable. And trust me, the next chance that these people will get to demonstrate their anger is at the May local elections. And I will tell you now, from what I have been seeing and reading in conservative forums, a lot of local Tory councillors are not happy that they are going to be sacrificed to try and keep Boris in a job. They are not happy at all. So expect, if Boris does lose heavily in the May local elections, and it does look like they are on course for that, and they're already prepping them for that, they're already trying to put the narrative out there that, oh, don't worry, we expected to lose. Expect some serious backlash from the Tory grassroots. Some serious backlash. Because they are not going to be happy. And neither are still the general public about this. And as we said on Monday, remember, the Tories cast themselves as the party of law and order. And yet, you have a Prime Minister, leader of your party, who is deliberately lied to Parliament, broken the law after repeatedly telling people to follow the law. And then we've had cases of people being fined over £2,500 in one cases, I think quoted by David Lammy, in somewhere down in Loughborough, I think it was, or Tottenham might have been. And yet most of these fines that we've seen have been about 50 quid. Again, the anger and the public anger over this, they have not moved on. They are still angry about it. And that anger is only going to build. So as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.